So I'm Detective Chief Inspector Cath Cummings of Merseyside Police, and I was the Senior Investigating Officer of the murder of Rikki Berry. I can confirm that 3 men have been sentenced to a combined total of 92 years for the murder of Rikki Berry, known to his family and friends as Nuggy, in July of 2024. Rikki Berry was only 36 years old at the time of his murder. He was standing outside the doorway of his partner's home address at 30 Quarryside Drive in Kirkby around 6:30 on the evening of the 17th of July last year. The jury has heard during this 4-week trial how Michael Smith was wearing a facial covering, riding a Saron electric bike when he approached Rikki Berry, firing 4 shots towards him. In convoy with him was Adam Williams, who we've heard described as having a leading role, was driving his Seat Cupra Ateca, and inside it his close associate, Connor Walsh. Out of 4 shots fired, 3 struck Rikki, one of which was catastrophic, and he later died from a gunshot wound to his chest. Effectively, this was an execution. This was a murder of joint enterprise with full and willing participation from each of those 3 convicted, all working together. The following men were found guilty of his murder and possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life. Adam Williams, aged 26, of Hamlet Crescent in St Helens, has been jailed for a minimum term of 31 years. Connor Walsh, aged 27, of Simmonswood Lane in Kirkby, was jailed for 30 years. And Michael Smith, aged 27, of no fixed abode, has been jailed, again for a minimum term of 31 years. Everyone's thoughts at Merseyside Police remain with Nuggy's family and friends. No sentence, however long, can change what these men did, but I hope knowing that they have been brought to justice and are now off our streets brings the family some small amount of comfort and now gives them time to grieve. Their actions have ruined lives of others. His son was only 13 years old and his daughter only 4 years old at the time. They were both present during this incident and saw what happened to their dad, as was his partner and her friend. This could have been an even more horrendous event with more injured, but no one will ever comprehend the impact this has had on them that were present that night. His entire family and those who loved or knew him have been affected. These men gave no consideration to the risk of harm to anyone that evening. I would like to thank the public for the continued support and working with us to remove those responsible from our streets. This case has affected so many people, and I hope this sentencing sends a stark warning to anyone who thinks it's acceptable to pick up and use a gun in our community. If you choose to get involved in gun crime, we will be relentless in finding you and could end up spending a significant part of your life in prison.
Detective Chief Inspector Cath Cummings,
Yes.
Thanks for joining us outside Liverpool Crown Court this afternoon after the sentences of the 3 men who were convicted of the murder of Rikki Berry. Obviously, it's been quite a dramatic case in court. There's been a lot of twists and turns as the trial has gone on. I mean, how is it for yourself as the detective who's in charge of the investigation? How nerve-wracking has that been as you've seen the case unfold in court?
They're always nerve-wracking. They're nerve-wracking to get them here, to make sure you're doing everything you can, to send a clear message of safety to communities, that we're doing everything we can to remove these individuals off the streets, everything that we can to support the family and get them justice, to then walk in and start hearing the evidence that you've put together with your team and the wider officers and staff across Merseyside Police over several months, and then hearing it play out is quite daunting. A lot of the evidence, and for certain reasons, the family, it was the first time they were hearing that, and the emotional impact that has. I respect that, and I can kind of gauge what's coming, so it's important for me to, and with the family liaison officers, to ensure that the family are then briefed about what they're going to hear should they not want to hear it, and the dignity and respect they've shown through that, of having to watch repeatedly CCTV of the murder actually happening in order for the jury to fully understand certain points that are being delivered during the case. I mean, that's just horrendous. No one should have to go through that. And hearing the level of detail and the nature in which Rikki was effectively executed, Getting to the stage of then when the evidence is all heard and the case is closed, and ultimately for the jury to go out. Again, that's very nerve-wracking. You just don't know if there's certain bits of the evidence that's been fully understood or interpreted. And then ultimately to get the guilty verdict is just phenomenal for all three, and the right decision's been made. And in terms of the sentencing, I hope that now gives the family some time to truly grieve without having to spend yet more time in Liverpool Crown Court or more police officers asking questions to bring a case to this stage. So, very nerve-wracking that at the end of the day all I want to do is make sure that I and the rest of the team have done the best for the family.
And of course the anguish that the family have been put through over the past few weeks here at Liverpool Crown Court, that's down to the fact that these three men couldn't own up to what they've done and plead guilty. Instead they pleaded not guilty, tried to claim in two other cases that they had nothing to do with it. In the third man's case he claimed that he didn't intend to kill Rikki Berry when he shot him 3 times. What are your thoughts of them and their actions?
Well, they were cowardly from the off. I mean, we've heard how two, one fled the area, the other one was certainly making efforts to, and it just frustrates it. They've never fully admitted responsibility for it. Two gave evidence and you heard what they had to say, but again was to minimise their involvement in it. They never gave the whole truth in their accounts, and only those three will know exactly why this happened and what happened. Michael Smith, partway through the trial, admitted responsibility for being the shooter, but again, was that only on the back of the other two saying that he was definitely the shooter when they'd had ample opportunity to say that before and prevent knowing what they did know and that they were responsible for this, instead of putting the family through it for what in essence is in the 5th week now.
I mean, you touched on motive there. I mean, we've heard a few different strands of evidence or potential evidence on this, whether it was, there was some beef involving Williams and some of Rikki Berry's mates, or we've heard that the defendants were involved in drug dealing themselves. I mean, have you been able to form a view of why you think this happens?
Well, as we've heard, we don't have to prove motive for an offence of this nature. In a lot of cases we do. In this case, we haven't fully understood what the reasons or the motive was behind it. But what the evidence does show that Rikki or whoever was at that address stood in that front door that day having 4 shots fired was absolutely an execution. Rikki couldn't move out the way. We've heard that where he was working outside, where his tools door was opened and he was trapped. But after firing the first shot, Michael Smith will have known that his target's in sight and he's kept on shooting.
And one of the things we heard in court today, of course, was that not only was Rikki Berry there, of course, that his partner was in the kitchen at the time of the shooting, and then his 2 children were also in the address. One of them was playing downstairs and potentially, in the line of fire, and I think the other one was upstairs. He'd just been with his dad a few moments before. I mean, I think that the judge touched on it as well, that there could have been 5 people killed that day.
Absolutely. Well, there was 4 fired, and the evidence presented showed that one of which has gone straight through from where Michael Smith has been on the electric bike, shot on the pavement, direct towards Rikki. It's passed totally through the kitchen, through a football trophy at the back of the kitchen, a window, and then only come to rest in the window of the shed at the back of the garden. As can be seen on the CCTV, the 4-year-old little girl's bike was in the front. She hadn't long since gone in from playing outside. They're just cowards and callous. They gave no regard to the risk that they posed to other people by doing what they did that night.
And not only would the children obviously put at risk of being potentially seriously injured during this incident, they'll have had to witness and hear absolutely harrowing things that they should never have had to go through as well.
No one should ever have to go through that, and especially a little 4-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy. It's horrendous. And as we've said, they just didn't care that anyone else was there. And they knew that he had children that lived at that address.
And finally, now that the killers have been put behind bars for a minimum of 30 years, do you think they'll be reflecting on whether it was all worth it for whatever their motive was?
Well, I hope they do reflect. I mean, we've heard today from the judge, Connor Walsh had no previous convictions, and suddenly he's now facing the next 30 years minimum in custody. So I hope he does reflect on what he's done, how he's not only been involved in taking the life, but he's ruined the lives of Rikki's children, his partner, entire family, and wider friends and community in Kirkby.